Hello, all you happy people. It's your favorite techno geek, Mike Meyers, coming at you with his Thursday edition of Ask Mike Anything. So the goal of this particular live stream is just to give all of us who are working on CompTIA an opportunity to talk together, to ask questions. We're concentrating primarily on IT fundamentals, CompTIA A+, CompTIA Network+, CompTIA Security+, but we can go outside of that scope depending on what people need. And bottom line is, welcome to all of you who are showing up here today. And I see we got a pretty good crowd showing up. Let's see who we got here. NPower's here. Hey guys, David Stelly, good to see you, man. Thank you so much for showing up. I had a feeling that after talking to you guys that we'd have somebody from NPower show up. Guys, NPower is an amazing program here. They're working primarily with veterans, is that right, David? And I asked them to come on board. They've got some classes going right now. So welcome. First of all, I want to let you guys know that anybody who's kind enough to be listening on this channel today, you get 50% off of all of our practice questions and all of our simulations. All you have to do is look right below here and go to our totalsem.com website, and using that, I believe it's still MMLive 406. Isn't it funny? I can't actually see what's beneath the thing on YouTube. But go in there and you get 50% off. On top of that, if you are an instructor, NPower, if you're an instructor, oh, is Perscolis here today? I'm just seeing, is anybody Perscolis here? No Perscolis, folks? Oh well. Perscolis is another one. The school I went to was in the Bronx. Anyway, if you are a teacher teaching an active class, Total Seminars is really ready to roll out the red carpet for you. We're prepared to give you free access to almost all of our entire library. And in some rare situations, we are actually in a situation where we might be able to provide free ebooks courtesy of McGraw-Hill. But in order to take advantage of this, instructors, look, don't think you're clever and can get past Kathy Yale, my head of sales. She's a genius at telling the real McCoy from the not real McCoys. And the bottom line is that all you have to do is contact Kathy Yale from my office. Scott will go ahead and type in Kathy Yale's address if he hasn't already. And you get free stuff. So, but you got to contact Kathy Yale, and Scott's got her email address there for you. So contact her, and ta-da! Let's see what we can do for you. I mean, the whole goal of this is to help people out during these trying times, you know. So, and they are trying times. I don't know about you guys. I'm an extremely extroverted person, and sitting around in my house like this is not conducive to my soul. I should be at a restaurant or out dancing. Yeah, Fat Mike dances. I do. I used to teach ballroom dancing. Can you guys believe that? So I'm ready to get out and getting tired of marching around with these things. But nobody likes this one, though. See, I thought this would be much better. What do you guys think, huh? No? Scott Jernigan didn't like it either. Anyway, so we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. Man, Scott, there is Perscolis here. Thank goodness. All right. Just so you guys know, we have, we're definitely doing RAID today. In fact, I don't think we're going to be able to do RAID all day because I had some other questions come in and such, and I want to definitely address those. So what's probably going to be happening here is we'll get like the core RAID levels down today and then move on tomorrow, and I want to do hardware versus software RAID. I could probably do it, but I want to have better video and graphic support than what I have right now. And basically I decided kind of on just a thing yesterday, we'll do RAID tomorrow. It's like, well, I can do RAID all day long, but you know, some of these things need pretty graphics and all this. So we'll be ready and we can finish all that tomorrow. All right, so anyway, let's see who's all here today. We got a crowd. NPower, man. Dave's like one of the first people. Good for you, brother. Carmeli King. Oh, man, we got plenty of NPower people here. Good. What else we got? Tulawit. Tulawit's always here. Already getting some questions answered. Thank you, brother. Anthony Sassini's back. Andrew Hutz wouldn't be a Mike Meyers AMA without Huts there, huh? Gino, of course. Terrence Tech, David Stelly, Greg Davis, TS, Terribly Sexy, Ernie Casillas, V-Mall, Paul Murphy. Man, we got everybody's here. Yeah, I'm not giving away anything today. Veterans and spouses. Thank you, David. I really just have learned about you guys. Lady Penelope Bird, Borough of Manhattan Community College. Very cool. How are you guys doing out there, man? You know, it's always, all the graphics show how scary things are in New York State. And so I got my buddy Audrey O'Shea, but she like lives up like way up north in New York. But you know how tough things are in New York City itself. So stay safe out there, man. All right. Yes, Ernie, we're doing raid today. It is. Daniel Grigsby. Hello, Mike. I'd like to thank you. Took the 220101, 220102, and passed both my. Oh, you passed today. Hey. Well done there. I need one of those like the live stream where it goes blark, blink, blark, you know, kind of thing. Don't you guys ever watch like gamers there on Twitch or something, and they always got all this fun stuff laying around? I'm working on it. I finally got PowerPoint to work on this thing, so. PSA is here again. Core 2, Core 1, Core 2. Daniel Grigsby. Oh, okay, congrats. Very well done, man. Florentine event. Oh, goodness, here it goes again. This scroller tortures me. Yeah, Symantec Norton yellow. No, that's just coincidence. I think that this is the color of material she had left over from a dress. Yeah, the plague mask. You know, the funny thing, I think the plague mask is funny, but like if this thing got even 1 ounce more serious, I think that could be taken badly. So I'll show you guys, but I'm not going to march around. I got a black cloak and everything. I could really overdo this. Vimal Lad, what's the difference between an SSD and an SSHD hard drive? I don't know. You know, an SSD, of course, is uses a form of flash memory. Wait, this just in. Oh, yeah. And then we have hybrid drives. So a hybrid drive is going to have, depending on how you look at it, hybrid drives have been around for a long time, where you'll have a little bit of flash memory, which will act mainly as a cache, a write-back cache, and then you have standard streaming media in there as well. So, yeah, they're still working on my sewer lines here, guys. The nice part is the noise you're hearing today is they're finally putting the dirt back in. So hopefully in the not-too-distant future, like i.e. tomorrow, not only will I have new sewer lines, for those of you who didn't hear about this, about a month ago, I'm walking down the steps and I stepped into an inch of raw sewage. It was gross. I had all the guys in bunny suits and I had to redo all my sewer lines. And so hopefully this stuff will be done pretty soon. If they get much louder, I can tell them to be quiet, but that gets expensive. Excuse me. Okay. I just told them to be quiet. We'll see if it works. Okay, so an SSD is a classic solid state drive, and HD is going to be our classic spinning materials drives. And then, so an SSHD almost certainly just is a hybrid drive. You can't tell any difference by looking at them. It's really more of a performance thing more than anything else. You know. I'll be right back, guys. Sorry. Where's my video staff? What do I need them? Hey guys, I got it's getting a little quiet. 2 to 3. At 3 o'clock, okay? God, I miss my studio. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, and we're back. All right, so I think got the answer for that one. What's the quickest way to study for A+? I love those kind of questions. The quickest way to study for A+ is to do it aggressively and do it every day. And don't watch Netflix. And pick a date in the future and sign up for the test. schedule yourself. If you're using my training materials in my books, I think we have them in the videos too. Scott, don't we? The kind of the breakdown of how long you need to study. For most people, it's about 120 hours of study for a lot of folks. If you're very experienced, it could be a lot less than that. If you're not experienced, it could be more than that. And let's say it's 120 hours. So how many hours a day are you going to study? Then you go ahead and you say, okay, well, I'm going to be able to study 12 hours a week. So that means in 10 weeks, you'll be ready. So then what you do is you go to Pearson VUE and you schedule and pay for the exam. And that's how you're going to study the quickest, is because you're going to be in a panic because you've just dropped just shy of 400 smackers to take the exam, and you'll study and it'll be very quick. What you don't want to do, and this always frustrates me, I run into these people who are like, you know, Mike, I have your 901 and 902 book. I'm like, yeah, you fiddle farted around and you didn't study and you didn't take the exam, and now it's 1001, 1002, and now you're forking over more money. It's like, that gets me very frustrated. I wag my finger at you in a paternalistic way. Tech nerd, I'm having a hard time differentiating RS-232, BNC, and RG6 on the 1001 series. Can I talk about these? Sure, I can talk about these. So RS-232 is the little D-shaped connector. I don't have any laying around right now. See if I can pull one up for you real quick. RS-232, it's the serial port type connector. It's going to be either a 25-pin DB connector, or it's going to be a 9-pin DB connector. It's one of the oldest connectors there are, and it's pretty much obsolete today. We don't see that anymore. BNC stands for, oh Lord, I hate getting into this. Bayonet Neo Councilman, British Naval Connection. So the BNC connector looks a lot like the connector that you have on the on your cable TV, except it's a locking connector as opposed to a threaded connector. And RG6 is a type of coax cable upon which you probably have the threaded type connector. It's known as a F as in Frank type connector. So they look very different. So RG6 is not a connector, okay? RG6 is a type of cable, and you might find a BNC connector on RG6 coax, or you might just find a threaded F-type connector on RG6, which would probably be the more common thing. RS-232 is very, very different. We've got a lot of good stuff on the videos that really go through every one of these connectors in great detail. So Tech Nerd, you might want to consider checking out some of my videos, which really goes through them all and shows them all. Oh, here they come. Here they come. Ba-ba-ba-da. Yeah, sorry about that. Just looking for questions. Okay. Now, for the record, Brandon, I am wearing workout shorts. I just got out of my yoga class. Yes, Mike Meyers takes yoga twice a week. It's really helping me quite a bit. And if anybody thinks yoga is for wusses, come take one of my yoga classes. I thought it was too, and I got schooled. And I mean, by the time, and we're doing it all remotely, just doing a Zoom session, and I get murdered. I mean, it's not hard. It is borderline brutal. And this gal is designed for big, fat, stiff people to help them get skinny and flexible. And so I'm a big fan of it. So I'm wearing my yoga pants, Brandon. All right. Anyway, so we're already starting to burn into more time than I'd wanted to. So let's start talking about RAID. Is that okay with you guys? Let's get some RAID going. So the most important thing we need to remember about RAID is that RAID was designed, well, not so much designed as considered a long time ago by some very groovy guys in Berkeley, California. The attitude being, why use one drive to do something when lots of drives working together can make things even better? And that's pretty much the cornerstone of how all this works. Let's see. Okay. So I guess the first big question we have to ask ourselves is, well, why RAID? Okay, so first of all, using multiple storage drives instead of a single drive can give us two benefits. You got to remember these things for the test, guys. This is the whole reason we use RAID. Number one, you want to speed things up. You want to write data to storage faster. And number two, you want some kind of redundancy. Now, RAID is not backup, but it can kind of act like backup in terms of saving you by having data written down twice or in such a way that it could be recovered. So speed and redundancy. So RAID comes in these different levels. So you've heard of this stuff, RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 10, and all this. And these different levels, some provide only a speed increase, some only provide redundancy, and some provide both. The important thing is that RAID levels aren't laws of physics, nor are they standards. This is a tough one for people to understand. RAID is a concept, man. It's like a flower dying in the desert. It is not, there's not like a RAID organization or anything like that. So people can follow these roughly, these RAID levels. And then there's big parts of the RAID levels that just say provide redundancy, but doesn't really say how exactly. And we're going to get into that in just a second. All right, so understanding that, let's take a look. So what I want to start off with is the most simple RAID level there is, RAID level 0, known as striping. So if you take a look up at the top here, I've got some kind of file.docx. This is a file, and I'm manifesting this file as a big, long blue string. And what we want to do is we want to save this file to two separate drives. So, well, first of all, you notice that these are round like they're rotational media. That one of the things that is certainly true is that you can use regular old SSDs for RAID. So I thought, let's just do SSDs because I think that looks better. And then I'm going to put some kind of controller in here. You don't have to have a specialized controller, but in many cases, you do want to have one. And we're going to be talking about hardware versus software RAID tomorrow. But for today, let's just get the idea that there's some kind of controller that our drives plug into, and we're going to call this a RAID controller. Now, when we're striping, what we're going to do is we're going to take the first little chunk, which we call a stripe, and we copy it to one of these two drives. In order to stripe, you have to have a minimum of two drives. And then we take the next chunk and we put it on the other one. And then we put the next chunk on the other one, and the next chunk on the other one. Yeah, Mike should have worked on his demonstration timings. I had a feeling this could be an issue. And we basically keep copying all these individual chunks called a stripe to two different drives. Now, let's take a minute and make sure we know what a stripe is, okay? Anytime you have a group of drives working together, you have an array. So the array you just saw was two disks in a RAID 0 array. Each array can be configured for a certain minimum data chunk, and this chunk is called a stripe. In a lot of RAID situations, we don't even mess with this. In fact, in my opinion, I rarely touch stripe settings when I'm setting up a RAID array. The defaults work really well 95% of the time. Stripe sizes can be quite large. I think I got an example here you guys can look at. Yeah, oops, sorry. So stripe is not the same thing as a hard drive sector or a block or a cluster. It's a different animal altogether. So like, take a look here. Here's an old array being configured, and you can see the stripe here. It says strip, which has been kind of a joke with Intel's RAID array stuff, is 128K. So if you know anything about hard drive clusters and things like that, you'll know that, like for example, a sector could still be as small as 512 bytes, but it's usually more like 4,096 bytes today, and that this is clearly a lot bigger than an individual sector, or even if we were looking at bigger NTFS clusters, this would still be a lot bigger than that. The idea behind stripes is that when an array in theory, an array knows what it's being used for. Like, for example, we have a big array at Total Seminars that copies huge video files. And I know that Michael Smyer of our office probably has tweaked with that because he knows that they're larger files, that larger stripe sizes allow it to copy faster or something, or reduce latency or that kind of stuff. But anyway, don't confuse a stripe in RAID with a cluster or sector or block or whatever term you want to use for mass storage. Different animals altogether. All right. Okay, so number one, why would we ever do RAID 0? I ask myself that question a lot sometimes. RAID 0 requires a minimum of 2 drives, although any number is allowed. So you can have 3 drives if you want to stripe, but typically when we stripe, we think in terms of 2 drives. RAID 0 provides speed, as stripes are written to other drives, reducing wait times. So what'll be happening here, you have these 2 drives here, right? So one stripe is being written over here. Now, as that gets written, this drive is now ready to rock and roll. So when this starts to write, there's no waiting or anything like that. It starts to write very quickly. So striping definitely provides speed, but there's some downsides to striping as well. And in particular, there we go. It doesn't provide any redundancy. So if you lose either of those drives, you've lost all your data. That's it. It's gone. So I do use striping sometimes. Mainly, I'll use striping as a low-risk scenario where I really want speed. I'm setting up a, I don't know, game server, local game server might be a situation like that. I'm having slow write times anyway, and I don't care if I lose anything. Maybe I'm keeping everything important is being stored off the system. The other thing is that I know everybody tries to make their first RAID array is almost invariably a stripe, and then they forget about it, and then one day a drive dies, and it's not good. But it does work, and it does speed things up. Okay. All right, so the next type of RAID I want to talk about is RAID 1 or mirroring, okay? Now, here we have our some kind of file again, and here we have 2 drives. You have to have a minimum of 2 drives for mirroring. And get a controller in there. And what we're going to do this time is I'm going to send one thing down, but now watch. The controller makes an extra copy. So in a mirror, you basically have 2 identical drives that are copying data onto both drives. So I'm going to let you guys guess. Is this going to provide speed or is this going to provide redundancy? Please don't tease me about my slow animations. I like them. It's like watching paint dry. Yay! Okay. So why would we do mirroring? RAID 1 requires a minimum of 2 drives, although any even number is allowed, or really the big thing is whatever your controller supports. RAID 1 provides redundancy as each block is copied to another drive. If one drive dies, the other has a complete copy. And RAID 1 does not provide speed. Making multiple copies actually slows down the writing process. Okay, so I've seen a lot of people do RAID 0 and then be sad about it, and I've seen a lot of people do RAID 1 and are happy about it. So RAID 1 is pure redundancy. We have 2 drives, and if one drive dies, the other one just keeps chugging on. Now this is a really important point, and we'll probably get into this tomorrow, but with RAID doesn't define things like hot swappable drives or hot spares or how to automatic array rebuilds or stuff like that, or does your phone go off? Is there an app on your phone that says, drive 2695347 is dead, go fix it. Those are extra features and usually proprietary features based on RAID manufacturers, so it has nothing to do with RAID levels. That's really important. And we'll treat that separately when we get into that. So let's go back and talk about some old RAIDs that are dead, D-E-D, dead. So in particular, the idea with RAID is that you wanted to be able to combine striping and with some methodology to also have redundancy. So RAIDs 2, 3, and 4 were levels of RAID that they all had to use a minimum of 3 drives, but they created some form of parity information on a dedicated parity disk. So if you look down on the diagram here, you'll see I've got 3 data disks, and the 4th one is a parity disk. None of these RAID levels ever had much popularity. I used a couple of RAID 3 devices back in the day, but today they're basically dead technologies. And most importantly, CompTIA does not test you on these RAID levels. So let's make it real simple here, kids, shall we? RIP, RAID 2, RAID 3, and RAID 4, we never knew ya. These are always tempting for me because there was a day when I used to talk about RAID 2, 3, and 4 a lot. This is a classic example where as an old guy, I need to put away old technologies. So forget about RAID 2, 3, and 4. You will not see it on a CompTIA exam, nor will you actually see the technology out there. And if somebody sends me a message right now going, well, I've got a... There's always somebody. Okay. All right, so let's go up to the next big interesting one, which is RAID 5. RAID 5 used to be wildly popular, and it's still popular out there, although other forms of RAID have really started to take off over it. So with RAID 5, you have to have a minimum of 3 drives, but in my particular example here, I've got 4 just because you don't have to have only 3. So what's going to happen here is each one of these are going to go in, and you'll see they're going to be treated as stripes. Do you see that? So we have a stripe, we have another stripe. In this case, we have a 3rd stripe, and all of a sudden something happens. So the way this particular array is configured, what we do is we take a look at stripe 1 and we do what's known as an exclusive OR mathematical binary addition to it, which is actually pretty trivial. And then we do it again with stripe 3, and that gives us a value called a parity value. So a parity value is kind of like, you know, like when we're if you divide 5 into 2 into 5, which one? I want 5 divided by 2. So the end result is 2.5, right? So the remainder of 0.5, in a base 10 world, those remainders are not very helpful, but in a binary world, using these types of calculations allow us to have these pretty unique parity values. Parity's been around forever. I mean, it's been around like for a very, very long time. But the cool part about parity, so if I gave you 5 divided by 2, if I said 5 divided by x equals 0.5, you would have a lot of answers. It wouldn't be just 2, right? So it would have just a remainder of 0.5. But that's not necessarily true in the binary world. So using exclusive OR, man, take a Security Plus class with me if you really want to get into exclusive OR. It's actually your first encryption we do is an exclusive OR encryption. But the bottom line is that it creates these parity values. And the nice part is if I lose one of these drives, the parity values will let me replace it. Now the thing that's important is that with RAID 2, RAID 3, and RAID 4, you always had that dedicated parity drive. We don't do that anymore. What we now have is what's known as distributed parity, and RAID 5 was the first example of that. So let's get back to that guy. All right, so now that we had that, we can go ahead and generate that parity value. And you see it's now grabbing the next 3, and it's going to generate another parity value, and it's just going to keep doing that until everything's completed. Now, RAID 6 is striping. You should always test your PowerPoint presentations. I've run through this thing 6 times today, and I'm missing a slide. It's probably going to show up in a minute. Why do we do RAID 5? Well, first of all, with RAID 5, you have to have a minimum of 3 drives. Guys, keep in mind, that's probably the most important question you're going to be running into on CompTIA on RAID is, what's the minimum number of drives to be able to do RAID 1? You know, that kind of thing. So always know your minimum number of drives. That's the first biggie. So RAID 5 needs Minimum of 3 drives, although you can use more, like I did 4 right there. RAID 5 supports the loss of a maximum of 1 drive. So if you've got 4 drives in a RAID 5 array and you lose 2, you've lost everything. Hope you got some backups. RAID 5 combines redundancy and speed and does a fairly good job of it. Because you're striping onto multiple drives, that gives you the speed of striping. You do have to generate a parity value, which slows things down a little bit, which typically we always had a hardware controller for that type of stuff. But it's not like it's going to be running at a regular RAID 0 levels. But for a long time, man, it was a pretty good little way to go. And you lose a drive, and somebody, hopefully you had a good RAID solution, and go, hey, you've lost a drive. You better unplug it, plug a good one in, and rebuild the array, and then life moved on. So RAID 5 was great. But a couple of things have been happening. Number one, storage prices have collapsed. I wish I had written down how much did a hard drives cost per megabyte over the years I've been playing with them, because the prices have collapsed. I remember one of the first hard drives I ever bought, yeah, I use my old man voice when I'm talking about old stuff, was a 10 megabyte Seagate drive that I paid $600 for. And that was like space age, man. I was like coolest kid on the block. And now today I was eating a box of Fruit Loops, and a 3 terabyte SSD fell out. Okay, I'm kidding, not quite that cheap, but they're a lot cheaper. And when that happens, you have extra room to do extra stuff. You got to keep in mind, one of the problems with RAID is that you're losing efficiency of your data. Like, for example, if you're doing a RAID 1 array, a mirrored array, if you have two 1 terabyte hard drives, your total storage capacity is 1 terabyte because it's copying everything. Does that make sense? Okay. So moving on, let's talk about RAID 6. So RAID 6 is also striping with distributed parity, but it does something a little bit different than RAID 5. So what we're going to look at here is there we go. So I forgot to put my document, but it doesn't matter. At this point, if you take a look, the little blue stripes are appearing. So we got 1, 2, 3 in this particular one, right? So it's time to generate a parity, but watch this. With RAID 6, it changes stuff. So you're going to generate one parity value in the traditional way that we already talked about, but then you're going to generate a second parity value. Now, how this parity value gets generated really depends on the solution. There's nothing in RAID that says, how do you make parity? It just says make a parity. But they usually often will do something called a bit shift, where they will shift the bit register for that particular stripe, 8 bits or something like that, and take the back bits and flip to the front or whatever you might want to do. And they go through an XOR and they generate a second parity. Now this does something actually kind of cool, because now what we're doing is, you see, we've actually written 2 parity values. Got it? So let's go ahead and do a few more, and you can see how these 2 parity values are distributed across the array. The cool part about RAID 6 is that you can lose 2 drives. There's a tremendous amount of confidence in losing 2 drives versus 1. In RAID 5, if you lose a drive, you better get on the stick and fix that sucker, because if you lose another, it's going to be a bad day. With RAID 6, granted, you don't have the efficiency of space that you do with RAID 5, but with RAID 6, if you lose a drive, you still want to fix it on a very timely basis, but there's not quite that terrifying panic that, you're sticking your finger in the dike and hoping that you're going to hold the water back feeling that RAID 5 does. So RAID 6 is great, and number one, RAID 6 requires a minimum of 4 drives. Whoops. There we go. So it requires a minimum of 4 drives, although any number greater than 4 is fine, just as the example I just showed you. RAID 6 provides redundancy, as each block is parity calculated to other drives. If up to 2 drives die, then you're in good shape. RAID 6 striping provides some amount of speed because of the striping. RAID 6 is actually fast, if not faster, than RAID 5. And again, RAID 6 cannot lose more than 2 drives or you've lost the whole array. Okay. So we've now covered RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 6. In all probability, those are going to be the most common types of RAID you're going to be running into out in the real world, and CompTIA is certainly going to hit on that. However, we then get into other types of RAID arrays that are known generically as either nested or hybrid arrays. The idea behind these is, again, because storage is cheap, I'd rather throw more hard drives at something that's more robust or more faster. Yeah, I'm a wordsmith. Yeah, that's how I talk. And so these have names like RAID 0+1, RAID 1+0. There's even stuff called RAID 53, RAID 0+3. I'm not going to get into any of those. The two I want to talk about are going to be RAID 0+1 and then RAID 10. So let's take a look at both of these, starting with RAID 0+1. So RAID 0+1 is a mirror of stripes. So I need you guys to look at this really, really carefully. So you'll see over here, I went ahead and did these arbitrarily like this so you can get the idea that it's more of a stripe. So this is just a regular RAID 0 stripe right here, okay? And then I have another RAID 0 stripe right here. However, these two are mirror copies of each other. So I can lose this entire thing. I can lose both drives over here, or I could lose both drives over here, and I'm still in good shape because they're mirrored. I cannot lose one drive here and one drive here. Get the idea? You should be paying attention right now. We are dangerously close to actual CompTIA A+ questions. All right, so one more time. On RAID 0+1 or RAID 0.1, if you want to call it that, we have a mirror of stripes. In this case, we could lose both drives on one side or both drives on the other side. We could lose one drive here, or we could lose one drive here. What we can't do, I can't lose a drive here and a drive here because the mirror won't be able to rebuild. Okay. So why do we do this then? Number one, RAID 0+1 requires a minimum of 4 drives, although any number divisible by 4 is allowed, but more importantly, it's whatever your controller supports. RAID 0+1 provides redundancy as the stripe sets are mirrored. If the 2 drives die on either side, I should say there, then the missing stripes are fine because I've got a mirrored set on the other side. It provides incredible combination of speed and redundancy. But you can't lose more than one drive per site set, as I just said, or the array is lost. RAID 0+1 is pretty popular these days. You get all the joy of RAID 0, you get all the joy of RAID 1, and it works pretty good. The downside is that you need a lot of drives. So if you are doing RAID 0+1, if you have 4 1 terabyte drives, your total capacity is going to be only 2 terabytes. So, yeah, that is part of the issue. All right. The other way to do this is RAID 10 or RAID 1+0. And this is, as you might guess, a stripe of mirrors. Okay, so let's look at this one real carefully. So we've got one mirror set over here, and we have another mirror set over here, and then they are striped. So in this case, we could lose one on either side, and we'd still be okay because they would be a stripe. So why do we do RAID 10? Well, same as RAID 0+1, minimum of 4 drives. It provides redundancy as the stripe set's composed of 2 mirrors. So if either half of the mirror drives die, like I just said, we'll keep the array in condition. And RAID 10 pretty much matches RAID 0+1 as the best combination of speed and redundancy. Okay. The downsides to classic RAID is that all drives in an array should be the same size, which sounds obvious when I say it, but in the real world, it's surprisingly hard to do. Number two, RAID itself doesn't describe a lot of things we need, like how does an array rebuild itself? How do we get a hot spare that's sitting there unused that will automatically start rebuilding an array if a drive dies? How can we make hot swappable racks so that I don't have to shut down a server just to add in a new drive? And that's where things like proprietary RAID and features that are unique to RAID solutions help fix these problems, and we'll do that tomorrow. The big thing I want you to take away from today, more than anything else, is, see, I'm keeping it suspenseful. What does CompTIA want you to know? Make sure you're extremely comfortable with the minimum number of drives needed per RAID level. And then number two, given a scenario, will you lose data or not? So you want to take your time thinking about, especially with RAID 10 versus RAID 0+1. It's easy to get these things confused. I get them confused. Pretty sure I got it right this time. But, and it's not hard, just look at it and say, okay, if I lost this, what would be happening, right? And as long as you have a whole mirror, that's usually the trick, you're going to be in good shape. In the real world, RAID 10 seems to be a lot more popular than RAID 0+1, and I can't find anybody who really makes a reason that motivates me to say that that's a good thing. So that is what we're going to do with RAID today, and man, you'd think I've practiced this a little bit because it took almost exactly 30 minutes, which was my plan. Tomorrow what we're going to be doing is we'll pick back up on RAID. In particular, I want to do hardware versus software RAID. I want to take a look at storage spaces in Windows and some other types of solutions that we can see that are even better than, in my opinion, than RAID 6. So that'll be fun, and we'll make sure we still have plenty of time to answer questions. Okay, are there any questions out here? This is an Ask Mike Anything, right? Ooh, lots of stuff. Redundancy, redundancy. Okay, let's find somebody. Oh goodness, there's a lot of questions here. I'm sorry, guys. Let's start here. Daniel Wilson, a cable puller told me that you should use Cat 6A instead of 6 for WAPs. Is there a reason for this? Sure, because Cat 6A is the most recent standard. We ran into the same thing back with Cat 5. Cat 5 came out, and they realized there was problems with the standard, and then they came out with Cat 5e. And really, Cat 5e didn't do much on the cable itself. What Cat 5e changed is it tightened the rule sets for proper crimping and things like that. So the answer is always use the most recent standardized version of cable there is, mainly because you don't want to go back into a wall anytime soon. That's really the big thing. So get the most recent and then cross your fingers that you're not going to have to go back and pull Cat 8 20 years from now or something like that. Lots of end power. I am finding it difficult to understand the difference between Internet Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Can you explain it, please? Oh, my 2 cents. Come on, those guys are getting... I said it was rude of me to tell them to be quiet. My 2 cents, they were told in the contract that I have to have it quiet from 2 to 3, and I'm paying them right now. So they get to lean on a shovel and drink a Coke on me for 2 hours. Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Okay. The challenge you run into with the internet is that the internet is, you always think like there's this top pile of cables, and there isn't. The reality is that the top of the internet, let's keep it to the continental United States to keep it simple, okay? The top part of the internet is about 6 to 10 companies who are competitors, who hate each other's guts. I mean, they really hate each other. And they compete against each other. They're constantly suing each other. But they have a problem, and that is nobody in the United States, no one company really covers every square inch of the United States, okay? So these companies get into, there's a term for it, transfer agreements or something like that. And basically, these guys come together. Anybody ever see the movie, television show Babylon 5? Well, we have about arguably 6 to 20 Babylon 5s all over the United States, all right? And these are NOCs, Network Operations Centers. And basically, they're big buildings that are owned by third parties with really, really high security, like crazy high security. And you'll go in and you go into a floor and there's like big stacks of routers all over the place. And these routers are surrounded with chain link fences and barbed wire. And what you're looking at is a interconnection between two of these major internet service providers, okay? And these are not the internet service providers that you contact, okay? This is the tier one. This is the top of the internet. And they provide, peering agreements. Thank you, Scott. And they basically have made agreements with each other that they don't charge each other anything for each other's data to move across in their routers. This is very important. That's what defines tier one. Those who are tier one don't pay anybody for data transfer of any form. They're at the top. And so if you don't have any peering agreements at all, you are tier one. Ta-da! Now, tier peering, that's the word, peering agreements. Thank you, Scott. So the next tier down is going to be really, really big regional internet service providers, and they probably have some peering agreements around, but they're also still paying a few people. Those people are generally considered tier two. And so tier two means got some peering agreements, but I'm still paying somebody for internet access. It always cracks people up. They're like, wait a minute, Mike, are you telling me that internet service providers have internet service providers? Yep, I sure am. And unless you're tier one, you have an ISP, all right? So that's tier two. Now tier three is, now we're gonna start running into people you know. And for example, probably any of the big cable companies, Time Warner, to AT&T to some extent, although AT&T kind of spans a lot of stuff in there. But tier three are ISPs who mainly sell retail agreements to individuals who don't have anything below them, right? So you and me would be an example. A big company, ExxonMobil would be an example. It's a big company, but they're not providing internet to anybody else. They're at the bottom. They're the users. And so a tier three company is a company that primarily sells to users. And then on top of that, it may have peering agreements, but not very many. And it's usually counting on ISP agreements from tier two, in some cases tier one. So how's that for an answer? Now keep in mind, there's no law of physics that says you're tier one or tier two or tier three. Especially in the tier two and tier three world, things get real fuzzy. I mean, Facebook owns massive underground cables. Did you guys know that? Underwater cables. And so Facebook, which is really just a website, is actually kind of an ISP at the same time. So things get very fuzzy. And CompTIA knows this, and CompTIA is not going to sit there and go, what, is this tier one, tier two, or tier three? But you would have to have some rough ideas about how that comes together. So Joe, I hope that helped you out a little bit. My 2 cents, I was really rude. My 2 cents, are you from California? I'm just guessing. Mike, I think I'm ready to do the test. Should I spend, yeah, Andrew, if you're taking the test tomorrow, don't study tonight. I mean, there are a few people where that kind of thing would help them, but for the most part, your night before, especially if you're taking it in the morning, yeah, no, go have an adult beverage, kick back, you know, catch up on watching Letterkenny or Corner Gas or all these Black Books. I'm trying to name all these series that nobody knows about that are amazing. Father Ted. And just watch those. Kick back, take it easy. The number one reason people fail CompTIA exams more than anything else is test anxiety. So you've got to be cool and just have confidence in your skill set. I mean, if you're really behind and in a panic because you don't feel you know enough, then maybe studying is a good idea. But people should time these things as well as they can so you don't have that. So my recommendation is relax. Oh man, don't make me talk about shibboleth and SAML. Homer. I mean, because we can't talk about just that. Hey, Scott Jernigan, let's do a little time on single sign-on tomorrow. Is that okay? Homer, I'm not trying to put you off, buddy. It's a bigger topic than what you think. And in fact, I might even save that for Monday. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to pass on it for right now. Synology does have wonderful RAID. In fact, tomorrow, so we're going to be looking at some Synology RAID. Mike, what is considered the minimum HDD capacity worth doing RAID? Minimum? I don't think you can think in those terms, really, because what you're talking about is, what's the minimum hard drive you can buy in any kind of quantity? Western Digital blue labels or green or, whatever your interest is. And right now, I don't think I can find any hard drives. I mean, you can find a couple somewhere, but anything less than a terabyte each would be silly, in my opinion. But the other thing is, we ought to talk tomorrow when we start talking about like storage spaces and windows and stuff like that. You'll see that sometimes RAID can be a quick and dirty thing. RAID can end up being some thumb drives if there's a situation that would require that, a temporary situation. So you can go a lot smaller than that, but for me it would be a terabyte. Jimmy, it looks like you're getting the answers for your CompTIA questions there. Yeah, Joe, I've made some pretty small RAIDs just practicing. Oh, and by the way, man, you guys want to build RAID arrays and not have a big hassle? You should really take a look at using virtual machines because you can throw on virtual hard drives all day long, and especially if you're going to do software solutions. That is how I actually will teach it in some classes when I don't have a lot of physical drives laying around, is I'll just spin up a VM under Windows 10 and make a bunch of virtual hard drives and make pretty much anything I want. Windows 10 pretty much supports, make sure I'm not a liar here, RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and then their weird proprietary kind of RAID 6 thing, and that's all under storage spaces. Redundancy. Okay, yeah, you guys are hilarious. Are you guys on Reddit by any chance? It looks very Reddit-y. Do RAID arrays need to be the same brand or capacity? Okay. Like I said, we really want RAID arrays. Each drive in the array with classic RAID, we really want it to be the same size because you run into real problems. Like say you want to set up a RAID 5 array with 3 hard drives, and 2 of the drives are 1 terabyte and the other one is 2 terabytes. You might as well just saw 1 terabyte off that 2 terabyte drive because it won't be able to use it in a classic RAID 5 array. And that's again where like Windows storage spaces and proprietary things like Synology, which was mentioned, have magic ways to get around that. But it's proprietary and they don't tell you how it works. So, I mean, it works pretty good. Look at all you Synology people here. This is hilarious. I'm going to have to make Michael Smyers show up tomorrow. He's really our direct line of defense on our Synology boxes. Moises Park. Remember, guys, the programming jobs are hotcakes. Hotcakes. Yeah. I'm just going through questions here, guys. Greg Davis, I use RAID 1 on my main PC system and Homeplex server. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people do it. I'm glad to hear you say RAID 1 and not RAID 0. You know, a good mirror will certainly save you save me more than one time. If you already have adequate experience in IT, is it safe to skip A+ and move to Network Plus and Security Plus? Yeah. Moses, you really need to think about, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? I mean, is networking your end goal? Is Windows administration your end goal? Is cloud your end goal? And make sure you have the hoops to get to that point, and then you're fine. For example, a lot of people take Security Plus who, in my opinion, don't need to take it because they're just not going to be diving that deeply into security. A lot of people should be taking Security Plus who don't take it too, because the thing I like about Security Plus, the CompTIA Security Plus, is that it's such a wonderful generic introduction to IT security kind of course, because it's really broad. It's really hard to write books for because you got a million little topics that don't really connect, right? With A+, I can start you with the CPU and then add the RAM and the processors and the chipsets and then the motherboard. Get the idea, and I can make it grow, and it kind of is like a little story. With networking, I can start with individual systems and start with a little switch and a couple of computers and then build the LAN up and do all that kind of stuff. But with Security Plus, it's a real booger. I find it the most challenging book that I write is Security Plus. And yeah, it's a tricky one. But Moses, the easiest answer is if you want to, you can skip A+. You can skip them all, But A+ is fun. Thank you, Scott. Mike, just Mike. How can you not like a guy like that? I passed part 1 of the A+ exam yesterday online. On to part 2. Don't get cocky. Congratulations, Mike. Get her done. Get her done there, brother. Oh, man, we're almost... Dakota Rayson, what have you missed? Well, yeah, I basically showed everybody how they can get $5,000. So, got to show up. Man, I'm still kind of jonesing on that SAML question. It's a pain. I don't like it either. Yeah, we're running out of time. Once more. Okay. Remember, guys, tomorrow, first of all, remember that just because you're nice enough to be here, you get access to 50% off all of our practice questions as well as our simulations. If you are an instructor who's actively teaching, in fact, if you're a student, NPower and Perscolis, tell your teacher that Total Seminars is giving away the kitchen sink to schools that are in challenged situations right now. All you got to do is contact Kathy Yale of our office, KATHYY, at TotalSem.com, and talk to her, and we can set some stuff up. And in some situations, we're even be able to get free ebooks to students through McGraw-Hill. So, but your teacher is going to have to talk to Kathy Yale, and we start that process by sending her an email, and then she'll pick it up from there. Oh man, we are pretty much out of time. What search should a noob focus on to go into the cloud? Kevin, I wish I knew what your skill sets were. A lot of what the cloud is the same as what we do on local systems. It's just in the cloud. You're still dialing up servers. You're still installing anti-malware. You're still configuring routers. You're still lighting up firewalls. There's a lot of the same stuff. I mean, they get their own names and terminology for stuff, but the reality is that especially with IaaS, the cloud you're still working on systems. So my recommendation is you would probably want to start with A+, because A+ does a great job on virtualization, which is a cornerstone of cloud. A+ does a great job about how do you take an individual system and get it connected out onto the internet, which is an important thing. Initial conceptualizations on IP addressing, port numbers, operating systems, all that kind of stuff. So probably CompTIA A+, if you're a noob with a capital N, would probably be the place to go. Eric Ramirez, I am not good at programming. How can I become good at it? Why become good at it? I'm terrible at writing code. I'm the worst coder you ever met. Nice part is I can get, everybody has already written so much code out there that I can usually just grab something for free out of somebody's library that's pretty much doing what I need it to do. I put a couple of tweaks in, and then I'm ready to go. Are there any AWS products that can be utilized for the single user? Absolutely. You can set up an AWS account. You need a credit card, but you don't put any money on it. They won't charge a penny to that credit card. And in fact, if you do something that might cost money, you'll go through a couple of screens of, are you sure? Because this is going to cost money. AWS does a very good job. I've been told that Azure also does a very good job, although I really haven't played with that side of it. I'm a big AWS fan, and I think everybody who wants to play in the cloud should set themselves up an AWS account. It's very easy to do. Yes, you need a credit card, but they'll never put a penny on it unless you do something dumb. So you just be really, really careful. Okay, well guys, it looks like the day has wrapped up. I hope that was helpful getting us started. The guys were telling me, like, Mike, you can't cover all this in a day and still get questions. And man, they were absolutely right. NPower, it was great to see you guys. Please come back. Guys, keep in mind, we do this every day. If I didn't get to your question, it's not a big deal. All you have to do is come back and ask a question. Also, if you want to, you can contact me directly. So I got 2 different emails. Doesn't matter which one you use. And send me your questions directly, and I will address them. I still think I even missed a question today, and I'm sorry. This is only my 3rd week at trying to do all this stuff, and I might be good at fixing your computers and networks, but I am terrible at video production. I miss my video production, guys, so much. But anyway, do keep in mind. Also, we'll be having some good giveaways tomorrow. So if you like free stuff, and I know you guys do, that you really need to consider coming back tomorrow, 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We'll be doing this Monday through Friday for the foreseeable future. There is no end, at least at this point in the game. And until I see you guys tomorrow, I want you all to have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And remember, tomorrow's a giveaway. All right, thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye.